Time to start in the fall of 1985 now, and well, yet again I'm thwarted from doing the format I'm waiting to do, because in this first week of 1985's fall TV schedule, CBS's The Twilight Zone reboot was the only show that premiered. Originally developed as a 10 p.m. series, the new Twilight Zone debuted instead at 8 p.m. on Friday, September 27th, 1985, up against new episodes of Webster and Mr. Belvedere on ABC, and Knight Rider on NBC. It ended up beating all three shows in the ratings. I'm glad that this is the only topic for this particular week's video though, because I have lots to say about this rebooted Twilight Zone. One episode specifically, but I'll get there. First, I want to point out the show's opening sequence, which is creepy and effective and its own thing, while also paying tribute to the previous version of the series. The theme this time is performed by the Grateful Dead. This version of The Twilight Zone runs an hour, and over the first couple of seasons will feature 2 to 3 stories per installment. The premiere features 2, and they are strong. The first story is called Shatterday, which is adapted from a short story by Harlan Ellison and is directed by Wes Craven. The premise is fascinating and wastes no time. Bruce Willis from In Country and The Story of Us fame plays an impatient man in a bar wondering where the person who is supposed to be joining him is. He goes to call them from the bar phone, but dials his own phone number by mistake. Surprisingly, he answers the phone. Suck it, Lost Highway.
Damn. What? Dialed the number I know best instead of Jamie's office. I dialed my own number. Did you ever do that?
Hello? Johnny, honey, I need that ice real quick.
I'm sorry. I must have dialed the wrong number.
What number did you want?
Sweaty bar Bruce Willis proceeds to freak the hell out, while sweater-wearing apartment dweller Bruce Willis is a Zen master about the whole thing. Over time, one of them becomes the dominant one, attempting to completely erase the other from existence, because two souls cannot occupy the same space.
Great theory, man. But try this one. Remember the weekend? I went to Kenny's lab and he took that trillion photo of my aura? Well, this is my theory. Somehow something got out. I don't know. Some part of me, something. Bust out pretty lame, don't we?
Man, coked out Bruce Willis is awesome. The DVD release for this series features commentaries recorded back in 2005 for some of the episodes. Shatterday being fortunate enough to get 2 tracks. The first includes Phil DeGuerre, the show's producer, along with Alan Brennert, who adapted Harlan Ellison's short story, Brad May, the cinematographer, and director Wes Craven. They have to cram a lot of information into 25 minutes, which includes stories about the genesis of the series, the very rocky relationship they had with Ellison, who was also the show's creative consultant, and this Bruce Willis guy, who at this point in his career had filmed a few episodes of Moonlighting, but the network hadn't picked the show up yet. The second track features, surprisingly, Harlan Ellison. It's been edited down to 14 minutes, but that's fine, the information here is fascinating. He clearly has some contempt for Wes Craven, if not all directors, for not respecting the words, which, as a writer, I can understand, but man, I've very rarely heard anyone disparage Wes Craven like this, and he goes off on an interesting tangent or two.
I was at a party at the home of Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in Star Trek. This is a number of years ago when his son Josh was just a child. And it was, I think, a birthday party for Josh, and the house was full of people, very few of whom I knew. But I was sitting there drinking a cup of coffee behind a plant.
Boy, as cantankerous as he might be, this track is a solid listen.
It's good that you buy my books. I mean, it keeps me from having to sell my body on the street.
This first story is terrific, a compelling top-notch start to the series. And I fully admit that as a kid, I would call my own phone number all the time, wondering if I'd pick up. I never did. Or did I? Speaking of things I did as a kid as a result of watching The Twilight Zone, let's talk about the second story in this premiere episode, this one titled A Little Peace and Quiet. In this episode, again directed by Wes Craven, Melinda Dillon from Close Encounters of the Third Kind and A Christmas Story plays a much put upon mom who discovers an amulet buried in her backyard that gives her the power to stop time by simply saying the words, "Shut up." The words "start talking" get time going again. This was my childhood fantasy for years and years and years. I got bullied a lot in school, because of course I did, and the premise of this particular episode was the revenge I so desperately wanted to exact on these bastards. I would dream up all kinds of scenarios where this would be the most effective, my favorite being where I'd stop time, drag one of these fuckers up to the roof of the school, start time and immediately push them over the edge, stop time again just before they hit the ground, take them back into class and put them back in their seat, and then start time again so that to everyone else they're suddenly screaming like a complete idiot and most likely shitting themselves in the process. Look, I know if I'd told anyone about this back then, I'd probably have ended up in therapy or a timeout or something even worse, but it was a place my brain could escape to, planning out all these insane yet ultimately harmless revenge fantasies. I've never ever forgotten this episode as a result. But that's not the only reason this story has stuck with me for so long. The way this episode ends is insanely powerful, and it'll stay with you for days. Hell, it stayed with me for decades. The story for the most part has been somewhat lighthearted, but it's in the final moments where nuclear war breaks out, and Melinda Dillon, not fully aware of what she's doing, I don't think, ends up stopping time right before the missiles land.
Oh, Stan, I love you. I love all you guys.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up.
Now, that marquee is a little too on the nose for my liking, but everything else about this ending is perfect. The scope, the dozens of extras all frozen into place, the final shot of the missile just hanging in the sky before everything cuts to black, and there's no closing narration, no cutesy, that's what you get in the Twilight Zone, or not this time, just a freeze and then a cut to black. You realize that this woman is now the only person alive, and she can never start time again. Her family will be frozen in time forever, their last moments being sheer terror. All the mom can do is wander the earth, also presumably forever, because if time has stopped, I doubt she'll age or anything like that. There's so much to contemplate about this ending, and like I said, it'll haunt you. With so much of this episode really striking a nerve, I figured I should see what else writer James Crocker had done over the years, and it's baffling because before writing this for The Twilight Zone, he was writing for shows like Simon & Simon and Whiz Kids. Two entertaining shows, sure, but not ones known for life-changing storytelling. Afterwards, he would go on to other shows like Deep Space Nine and The Outer Limits, but damn, this is one hell of an introduction to genre writing for the man. This episode also has a commentary track with Phil DeGuerre, Brad May, and Wes Craven. Craven commands the track this time, telling stories about how hard it was to get the kids to freeze for any length of time, although the dog was a total pro at it. Also, Melinda Dillon was a difficult actress to work with, surprisingly, but the two did reconcile at the end of the shoot. I'm making a prediction now that while I'll enjoy the fantasy elements of Amazing Stories again, and continue to recognize the solid suspense storytelling of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, these Twilight Zone episodes are going to be the thing from 1985 that had the most profound effects on my childhood brain. For now, though, don't change that channel, because coming up in the next installment, I've got a quick something to say about a 2017 series that I loved wholeheartedly. Stay tuned.